or the gym or on the field, there was a real problem. And so we wanted to do something about it, and not just in sports, but across the education landscape. So together with our X Games brand, we launched Shred Hate. And Shred Hate brings in the no bully system to schools across the country. And we were very excited for our partners at MLB to join on board with us and really be able to expand the program. And in fact, by the end of this school year, we will have impacted over 188,000 students across the country, which we're really, really proud of. I just want to give a quick thank you to No Bully for putting this on today. Also our esteemed panelists and our incredible partners at Major League Baseball. But most of all, I want to thank all of you and your commitment to helping stop bullying. Really, from the bottom of our hearts at ESPN and X Games, thank you. So now I want to turn it back to Nathan.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. So at this time, I'm excited to introduce the founder of No Bully, Nicholas Carlisle.
Thank you, Nathan. And thank you so much, all of you, for giving up time in your busy schedule to join us today and for caring about this subject and caring about your students. This is an extraordinary time to be alive. The internet gives us the ability to connect with almost anyone across the world and to find information out on almost any subject. We're truly living in a digital age, and that's the age in which we are raising our students. Nearly every young kid now has access to a digital device. We at No Bully are putting out a survey at the end of the month, and what that survey will show is that 84% of kids under the age of 8, 84% of kids under the age of 8 have their own device that connects them to the internet. Those percentages only get bigger as students get older. So the old age of a digital divide is pretty much over for the United States. Nearly every kid you are teaching has a device of their own. I wanted to give you that framework because it paints the broader picture of the internet, which is so easily seen as a force for darkness, but it's as much a force for darkness as for light. And I want us to be very clear about this too. It's not the internet that creates this dark subject of cyberbullying that we're talking about today. It's human nature. And just as bullying took place in all the areas where students were congregating in the era before the internet, it now takes place also in the internet. So the organizers for today's workshop wanted me to give you a definition of what cyberbullying is. So it's up on the screen right now. And it's a cluster definition, meaning that it's a whole range of different behaviors. As you look at this, you'll see that what cyberbullying does is essentially takes a lot of what I call old-style bullying, which is physical, verbal, relational bullying, and brings that across to the internet. There's also an important definitional point here. I don't want you, as you look at this, to think that cyberbullying is a standalone form of bullying. The reality is that nearly all the kids that are the target of cyberbullying are also the target of old-style bullying in the school day. Often it starts online and moves back to the school yard or vice versa, but it's generally the same kids who are being targeted. So what that means for you as a school is that if you hear a report of cyberbullying, go wide. Explore with your students what else is happening and how are they being treated by students at your school. Can we move to the next slide? And I want to talk now about where cyberbullying takes place. So what we see here is the kind of the frequency of cyberbullying. There are lots of different types of cyberbullying. Girls are more likely to be bullied than boys. And the reason for that is that there's much more of a tendency of girls to use social media. It's more likely to occur between friends and strangers because what we're talking about is generally the cohorts that are going through your schools together. And sadly, there's a lot of focus on differences. Moving to the next slide. What we see here is, not surprisingly, cyberbullying takes place in the websites that your tweens and teens most frequently use. So we see here in order Instagram, which has become the site of choice for most teens and tweens, is the most prevalent site that online bullying takes place. And so you can see the list there in kind of order of frequency. Can we move to the next slide? The challenge with bullying generally, and it's also true of cyberbullying, is that it focuses on differences. So we did a survey which we're publishing with AT&T, which will appear in just a few weeks' time. I think this is the same slide. Maybe it's not. And what that unveiled was the frequency that differences are the cause of cyberbullying. And interestingly, so much is focused on physical appearance, how you look. And then we have differences that are more classic differences of diversity, like race and sexual orientation and disability. So as you tackle bullying and online bullying, because you're probably going to be tackling both at the same time, there's a strong social justice element in what you are addressing. And that element is really against the fabric of what you're trying to do as a school. It's against the social justice aspect of the public education mandates that you are all championing in your schools. There's a particular challenge around online bullying. So yes, it is a type of bullying, but it's particularly invidious. And it's invidious in three ways. When a person goes online and they can't see the whites of your eyes, their empathy generally starts to fade, often to zero. And they do things online that they would not do in face-to-face interactions, because those face-to-face interactions and your responses act somewhat as a brake upon their behavior. And then once bullying has gone to the internet, it becomes its own reality TV show and is often treated as a form of entertainment, which is then rapidly spread. And once it's gone viral, that post is very hard to remove. So we are facing a challenging phenomenon here. And the question that we're facing today is, what can schools do to prevent bullying and cyberbullying? And I'm so glad that you've all joined us here today, us and all the panelists that you see in front of you. And our mission at No Bully is to partner with schools for a year. And what we do in that year is we train schools in a system. It's called the No Bully system. And the point of that system is to bring schools to a point where they can both prevent bullying and respond effectively when bullying takes place. And the way that we do that is we tap into the empathy of kids. 98% of kids do have empathy. And if you can create the conditions in your schools that promote that empathy, you have the strongest chance of turning bullying behaviors around. And I think what unites all the panelists today is our commitment to raising that empathy in students and bringing that forth as a solution to bullying. So that said, I'm going to hand this back to Nathan and enjoy this wonderful array of panelists that you have with us today.
Great. Thank you very much, Nicholas. I think that was a very helpful overview, and I think we'll be able to ground the rest of the webinar in the context of that overview of what cyberbullying is, what it looks like, how it differs from other forms of bullying. So at this time, I'm happy to be able to introduce our esteemed panelists. We have three key panelists with us today, which you can see their photos in the slide. First, we have Dr. Ed Green. Second, we have Janelle Maines. And finally, we have Alex Holmes. They have incredible experience, qualifications, professional, backgrounds that really make them uniquely suited to talk to this issue in a variety of ways. For the sake of time, I'm going to ask each one of them to briefly introduce themselves and provide a little bit of their bio when it's their turn to speak, rather than giving the full rundown of each of their bios up front. So with that being said, our first panelist today is Dr. Ed Green. Ed, can you briefly describe your work around this issue of cyberbullying for our participants today?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ed Green. I'm Vice President for Children, Youth, and Digital Media Literacy Initiatives at the Hispanic Information and Telecommunications Network. And this is a 24-hour Spanish language, non-commercial, independent media outlet. And in my role there, I work in the division called HITN Learning. But overall, HITN's mission is really focused on a commitment to advance the educational and socioeconomic aspirations of U.S. Hispanics through the development and distribution of quality and authentic content, which is on air, online, and on the ground. And this also includes opportunities for HITN to be involved in outreach initiatives, such as the unique partnership that led to our work with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office and its Bureau of Youth Initiatives and Diversion, and opportunities to talk about these issues related to cyberbullying. As background, we are involved in work that really helps to give voice to young people through teaching storytelling skills through both technical film making and narrative skills, using 21st century skills for students to learn to work in teams and collaborate, and to provide adults, whether they're working in classrooms or in community-based organizations, with ways of dealing with the accountability that they need to deal with in terms of looking at standards and things that they want students to know and be able to do. But finally, we are using an approach that has student-produced short-form videos, and these are about cyberbullying. The HITN Digital Storytelling Workshop, which I'm a part of along with other members of our teams at HITN and the DA's office, grew out of concerns and cases that are being seen in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Bureau of Youth Initiative and Diversion. And it's really about the escalating cycle of retaliation, violence, and bullying that moves between the virtual world and the physical world. And so the digital storytelling workshop was piloted with middle school and high school age students, with initial students from Brooklyn International High School and Brooklyn's Police Athletic League After School Initiative. And one of the things that we discovered is that it has to be acknowledged that youth themselves have voices that must be tapped and included and heard. And so what we've learned is that students have background knowledge that we need to build upon. And so those are some of the elements that we've brought into this unique partnership between a media company, a software developer that deals with a smartphone app, and with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office.
Great, thank you. So I think now maybe we can just dive right into concrete strategies that will help the participants address the issue of cyberbullying. So, based on the experience that you've had with this initiative that you're talking about, what do you think are some concrete strategies that teachers, youth leaders, anybody else on the line can use to really support the inclusion of student voice, specifically with regard to combating cyberbullying?
Well, I think one of the things that we've learned, and our CEO, Mike Nieves, has really supported this work and seen how we can get at the untapped stories, including the stories of the inappropriate use of social media. So I think one of the examples that we can talk about in terms of a strategy is based on just an overall theory of change model that we use. And that is for those who are either working in direct classroom activities with youth or in out organizations, we have to have a mindset that says that teaching and learning that supports the inclusion of student voice has to have some strategies that actually get the student voice involved. So we believe that many people are familiar with project-based learning, and some of the topics that are associated with cyber bullying and cyber safety are topics that we encourage conversation around, and we want to be able to begin to use discussion starters that are around that deal with those particular kinds of issues, and have the students draw on their current knowledge and perceptions. Many young people have background knowledge about some of the issues that we talk about around cyberbullying, but unfortunately we don't always make sure that we're getting the input from them about their understandings of some of the facts and things that impact their lives. So a strategy, for example, of using principles of pedagogy that draw upon students' prior knowledge and the use of the English language arts standards, for example, that support the development of skills such as capturing factual information, demonstrating the ability to communicate, and include different tools like digital video, are options that can easily be used. So one of the more general strategies is to use some of the things that we know about pedagogy and instruction to actually get student voice involved in bringing that information to the table.
So in terms of, you spoke to kind of the collaborative element of working with students. And in thinking of students, what would you say are some ways that we can help students themselves learn how to protect themselves from becoming targets of cyberbullying online?
In the conversations that we have built into the process of the small group work that we do, along with the broader large group work that we do, I think the notion of digital citizenship is a strategy that can be used to help young people think about how their behavior is influencing others. And it's sort of like using the golden rule of online. It's really important to be able to talk about the ways that we treat others is important to think about, but also teaching them about the ways in which they use their information or they make their information available. Many young people are oftentimes just sort of ranting, and so they'll tell things that don't need to be told necessarily online and forget that those things are going to stay with them because they don't go away. So I think, just sort of one of the things that I think we try to do is to keep the conversation open in terms of understanding how your behavior impacts others, but how your behavior as an upstander might be able to help eliminate some of the things that are more negative that you encounter online. So having a proactive approach in that direction also represents some of the things in our workshop.